Federal government reassures Nigerians of adequate protection for their legitimate economic interest anywhere in the world.
Whatever measure that needs to be taken to ensure the safety of Nigerians in South Africa, we will take.
Police reads Riot Act as it deploys personnel for security in strategic areas.
Information and Culture Minister tasked heads of agency on maximizing the potential of culture as a tool for peace and national development.
Also use cultural diplomacy to help reduce incidences like the ongoing xenophobic attacks against Nigerians in South Africa.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the latest actions taken by the Nigerian government in reaction to attacks on Nigerians in South Africa. All right, what is certainly one of the most topical issues of the moment is the renewed xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and nationals of other countries in South Africa by South Africans, with the attendant loss of lives and destruction of property. Already, President Muhammadu Buhari has held a strategic meeting with Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyama. And top of the resolutions from the meeting, of course, is the stepping down of Nigeria's participation at the World Economic Forum taking place in Cape Town, plus the recall of Nigeria's High Commissioner to South Africa for consultations.
Exactly, Kingsley. Impeccable sources in the presidency has confirmed the stepping down of the president from attending the World Economic Forum to be hosted by South Africa. Similarly, the Nigerian government insists on full compensation for losses suffered by Nigerians and Nigerian businesses in South Africa.
Well, there have also been several appeals from a number of quarters, including President Muhammadu Buhari, the Vice President, organizations and religious leaders, on the need for Nigerians to exercise restraint while the issues are being addressed. Now, you will recall, Jumai, that there have been reports of pockets of violent reactions, especially in Lagos, Ibadan, and elsewhere, where some persons have attacked the premises of some business premises belonging to South Africans, specifically ShopRite and MTN.
Exactly, Kingsley. And also in today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, we shall take a look on matters arising from the current partial closure of land border. The porous nature of Nigeria's borders not only encourages crime and other social vices, but has also been shown to have retarded Nigeria's socio-economic development. The country's geopolitical area overlaps between four neighboring countries of the Republic of Benin, Niger, Cameroon, and Chad, whose population are linked by socio-economic and cultural bonds.
You're right, Juma. Of course, as you said, that's our second topic. The first one is to evaluate the actions taken already by the Nigerian government. Now, the porosity of Nigeria's borders, which we're dealing with in our second topic, has paved the way for the proliferation of hundreds of illegal routes through which illegal activities are also taking place, including, but certainly not limited to, the smuggling of goods.
You know, the economic impact of smuggling on Nigeria, talking about the country's losses, is said to be quite enormous, Kingsley. And for instance, the immediate past Minister of Agriculture had said some time ago that Nigeria loses $5 billion to smuggling annually. That's quite massive. You know.
That's right. Now, there's also a report which says that Nigerian customs loses some 200 personnel annually in the course of fighting smugglers. And while there are also indications that smuggled rice makes a mockery of the country's quest to boost farming through, of course, increased local production and therefore reduce dependence on imported rice that can still be found in various markets in Nigeria.
Now, fed up by the activities of unrepentant smugglers who ply their illicit trade from different border towns, the federal government on Wednesday, the 21st of August, exactly 15 days ago, ordered partial closure of the borders to prevent smuggling from neighboring Benin, Niger, Chad republics. That of the Tema border was to curb smuggling of rice through that corridor and allow boosting of Nigeria's economy by saving agricultural products such as rice and enabling Nigerian farmers and other manufacturers reap from their labor, as well as secure Nigeria's land and maritime borders. And the President Muhammadu Buhari explained to the Benin counterpart Patrice Talon on the margins of the just concluded TICAT 7 in Yokohama, Japan.
Well, the partial closure is being coordinated by the Office of the National Security Advisor. And the Joint Border Patrol Team has been set up by the federal government, has already launched an offensive against night smugglers. And the smugglers are said to have, of course, resorted to their nocturnal activities following the partial closure. Feelers indicate, regardless, that this is becoming a big challenge for them. In other words, the partial closure is said to be yielding results. But what are the other matters arising from the partial closure of Nigeria's borders with her neighbors? And how effective will this be? How sustainable are the current measures? What needs to be done also by our neighbors? Those are issues, of course, we shall raise in our second topic for conversation this morning. And it's on that note I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We're right here in Abuja. That's Nigeria's capital territory. It's a wet morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
Exactly, a very wet morning, and as expected, Kingsley, we are broadcasting live from Abuja on the network service of the NTA. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we shall bring you the complimentary segments of the program, newspaper review, business, sports, and others to make your morning even brighter. And as usual, we start with the morning news with Abdul Malik Adil. Abdul Malik, I see you have enjoyed the morning rain.
I did, and it's pretty cold. Good morning and welcome to the morning news. The federal government is reassuring the nation that it will not abdicate its responsibility to adequately protect Nigerians and their legitimate economic interest anywhere in the world. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, stated this while briefing journalists after an audience with President Muhammadu Buhari on the reported xenophobic attacks against Nigerians in South Africa.
What has happened in South Africa is totally unacceptable. We will not accept it. And as I said earlier, enough is enough. And we're not going to come back to this. We're going to have to address it once and for all this time. So this is a position of the government that we're going to draw a red line here. And whatever measure that needs to be taken to ensure the safety of Nigerians in South Africa, we will take. And we have a very clear idea of what we want to achieve. And the special envoy has very clear directives from Mr. President about the commitments and guarantees that we expect from the South African government.
Meanwhile, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has appealed to Nigerians not to engage in any reprisals against the South Africans and their investment in Nigeria. The Vice President says government is already taking actions at the highest level to see to the end of these xenophobic attacks and ensure that perpetrators are punished.
The government has already, in very strong terms, expressed outrage to the South African government, and the president has also decided that an envoy will be going over to South Africa to express complete objection and the fact that we're so offended by what has happened. So that I think will suffice, for now. But we must be careful not to hurt ourselves by attacking businesses that we think are South African. Practically all of those businesses, MTN, look at the number of people that are employed, they're all Nigerians. Same as ShopRite, shops are owned, many of the shops in the malls are owned by Nigerians. So I think
The federal government has advised Nigerians in South Africa to avoid high-risk and volatile areas in South Africa following renewed xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals until the situation is brought under control. A statement by Ferdinand Nwoye, spokesperson of the Foreign Affairs Minister, explains that government is seriously concerned about the tension in South Africa and is therefore engaging relevant authorities to ensure safety of Nigerians. The statement commended South African police for arresting perpetrators and also calls for their immediate prosecution. Similarly, FCT Minister Mohamed Musa Bello has called on residents of the Federal Capital Territory, especially students and youth, not to carry out retaliatory attacks on South African nationals and business interests in the FCT over the recent xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in that country. A statement by the Chief Press Secretary to the Minister, Anthony Ogunleye, states that the federal government was already exploring diplomatic channels to address the issues. It says South African businesses in the FCT are in partnership with Nigerian investors and are contributing to the economic development of the territory. Now, the National Orientation Agency, NOA, has appealed to Nigerians to remain peaceful and law-abiding despite unwarranted provocation of xenophobic killings of Nigerians in South Africa and destruction of their businesses, pointing out that violence is not Nigerians' national core value. Director General of NOA, Dr. Garba Abari, made the appeal in Abuja in the wake of the reprisal attack in parts of the country by some Nigerians, stressing that the federal government is engaging the South African government and taking all necessary measures to effectively address the situation. And the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has added watertight security around embassies, foreign missions, foreigners and their businesses within the country. This followed attacks on ShopRite outlet in Lekki area of Lagos State on September 3, 2019 by some miscreants who looted the malls under the pretext of protesting against the incessant xenophobic attacks in South Africa. A statement by the Force Public Relations Officer, DCP Frankuba, notes that all Zonal Assistant Inspector Generals of Police and Commissioners of Police across the Federation have been placed on red alert to ensure no similar violence is replicated within the country. The National Human Rights Commission has joined other Nigerians in condemning in strong terms the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and other nationals in South Africa. The Executive Secretary of the Commission, Tony Ojukwu, calls on the International Criminal Court to assure jurisdiction on the matter so as to bring perpetrators to justice.
A permanent solution to the ongoing xenophobic attacks in South Africa, that the International Criminal Court must hold accountable the government officials that through their comments or actions have supported this and have fueled these xenophobic attacks that have become systemic.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has called on the Directors Generals and Chief Executives of agencies in culture sector to explore culture as a potent tool for promoting peace and sustainable development in the country. The minister handed down the call when he received in audience the heads of the agencies in Abuja.
These problems are not unconnected to the breakdown in moral values and increasing disregard for our cultural values.
Citizens.
We must also use cultural diplomacy to help reduce incidences like the ongoing xenophobic attacks against Nigerians in South Africa, which has led to deaths and loss of livelihood for many of our citizens living in South Africa.
That's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Jumai after the break.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please, did you hear that?
Of course I did. That is village master tune.
So Auntie Amebo was not gossiping then?
village headmaster is celebrating 50 years.
50? Already? This is not a joke. Oh.
It is a national celebration. NTA and village headmaster family are commemorating 50 years.
Hey, please tell me, when is our golden jubilee?
It is from the 8th to 11th of October 2019.
I have to go and get ready. It's time to party.
Women. But we, men, will be there too.
Please.
Digital studio equipment is a critical aspect of modern television that requires special skills for their operation and maintenance. These skills define the content and output of television and are acquired only through professional training and experience. NTA TV College JOS is organizing a special 4-week intensive course on digital studio equipment maintenance for engineers and technical officers in public and private television stations. The course will equip participants with modern techniques, technologies, and skills for effective and efficient operation and maintenance of digital studio equipment. Also, a special 4-week course on intermediate photojournalism and photography will run simultaneously. It is an essential course for photojournalists, photographers, public relations, and information officers to upscale their skills and capacities in photojournalism. Participants will be equipped with modern skills in photo editing, studio, and outdoor lighting, and more in just a few weeks. The venue for both courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. Date 16 September to 11 October 2019. Course fee 100,000 naira only per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
Thanks for rejoining us. Ministry of Budget and National Planning emphasizes the importance of coordination of the activities of development partners in Nigeria. Now let's join Kunle Ade for details.
The Minister of State Budget and National Planning, Ikande Agba, at a high-level roundtable meeting on national donor coordination held at the Ministry of Finance, Abuja, revealed that the ministry is already finalizing the official development assistance ODA policy, which seeks to maximize the benefit of international assistance and ensure alignment with national priorities. He called on donors and partners to update their reports in the development assistance database system domiciled in the ministry and also channel all their interventions through the ministry, which is the country's gateway to development assistance. And the equities market on Wednesday closed on a negative note as Nigeria's stock exchange or share index depreciated by minus 0.97% to close at 27,319.64 points, as against plus 0.08% appreciation recorded previously. And here are the details of Wednesday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Ade.
Thank you, Kunle, for the business package. Next for us on the program, we'll take a look at the front pages of the papers we have this morning.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Ateobi, is in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Joy. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, good to see you. How was the rain on your way to the studio?
Well, I think the rain came down forcefully after 2 days of dry spell. You know, I was saying maybe we were having an August break in September.
Yes.
It descended very, very heavily. In fact, many vehicles had to park on the highway this morning.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, but the skies were overcast by the time I was getting to the studio. So it looks like we're going to have fairly grey hours this morning. And then we'll check out what the weather prospects will be like. Jumai, I have the Daily Sun newspaper, and I'm sure you have the Blueprint newspaper. Yes. Daily Sun says, more trouble for Okorocha, ex-wife and governor, others to forfeit assets to EFCC. We have recovered over 199 million naira and $48,000, and that's attributed to the commission. Details can be found on pages 4 and 5. As action against South African business interest spreads, Daily Sun is claiming that the federal government has barred Nigerians from South Africa. I don't think that's correct, Bayo.
No,
that's not the correct rendering.
Travel advice.
Yes. But we have a number of writers with that headline. That Nigeria recalls envoy, pulls out of World Economic Forum. Inspector General of Police orders security around embassies and foreign firms. Artists boycott Southern African nations' shows. That's to say that artists are boycotting shows in South Africa, and air peace to evacuate Nigerians. And you can see the photograph there on the front page, the meeting that took place yesterday at the presidential villa, at which a number of important diplomatic decisions were taken. In the middle there, President Muhammadu Buhari, to his left, Vice President Oshibajo, and to his right, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Geoffrey Onyama. And just adjacent to that photograph, you see some bonfires just where on the Umaru Musa Yaradua Expressway, also popularly known as Airport Road, and that was just close to ShopRite, which is on that axis. And you can see a deployment of police personnel around the ShopRite complex on the Airport Road, and indeed other ShopRite complexes, including Jabi Mall, the one at Silverbed right here in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. Kogi governorship. One feared dead, many injured at PDP primary. With the rider, Musa Wada wins. That's page 3. IPOB gives Southeast governors conditions for peace, insists on referendum and demands public apology. Page 12. Banditry. Mob sets Casino SSG's house and APC office ablaze. Village head flees palace. 35 are arrested. It is on page 4.
From the Blueprint newspaper, we just have similar headlines, but just beside the masthead, Nigeria, Cameroon strengthen ties on MSME's development. And just below the masthead of the Blueprint newspaper, 24,000 ad hoc staff for Kogi Bayelsa polls. That's coming from INEC Chairman Mahmoud Yakubu, with a rider Wada Diri PDP tickets, Leon for APC. And just below the 24,000 ad hoc staff for Kogi, 2020 budget will be submitted to National Assembly September ending. That's coming from the minister. You find that on page 32. And the headlines, just like Kingsley read, Nigeria, other African nations boycott World Economic Forum with advice don't travel to high-risk areas. FG advises Nigerians, recalls envoy. NAD 6 emergency AU summit. And attacks, killings, despicable. That's coming from the Nigerian Labour Congress. And the picture story there, just like Kingsley read, President Muhammadu Buhari, Vice President Oshibajo, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Onyema, talking about the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and other African nationals in South Africa. Just below the picture story, banditry. Angry youth set Katsina SSG's house, APC office ablaze. You find that story on page 9. Just at the bottom plate of the Blueprint, Rufai outlaws checkpoints on Kaduna highways. You find that story on page 5. Strange illness. 4 Borno students die. 12 hospitalized. You get to read that on page 13. Nigeria ranks 129th in Global Tourism Index. That story is on page 34. Immigration begins e-registration of foreigners in Kwara State. You get all the details on page 17. Bio.
Yes, Nigerians have said they have a right to protest this xenophobic attack in South Africa. However, they are enjoined to exercise restraint and not to resort to reprisal. President Muhammadu Buhari says violence must not be paid back with violence. Reprisals will make the world see Nigeria as the same as South Africa. We have to take the moral high ground. We are victims and have established that to the international community and to South Africa. We here must not fail the temptation to also resort to the acts that we are condemning. That is the strong advice from Mr. President. However, the shopping malls, telecom companies, and business that are suspected to be owned by South Africans, but are subsidiaries in Nigeria and they are owned by Nigeria. Therefore, they are advised that it is double jeopardy if you choose to destroy them here, because the implication is that Nigerian business interests will have been destroyed in South Africa and at the same time also in Nigeria. So far, shopping malls that were targeted were protected by police. So far, it's only in Lagos that it was said that a shopping mall was looted and 126 persons have been arrested. 3 policemen were injured, 1 vehicle belonging to the police was set ablaze, and I think 1 person was shot. In Ibadan, a telephone outfit was set ablaze. But all over the nation, police protected all the targeted entities. And so far, Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos has warned against any violence in Lagos. Foreign Affairs has advised Nigerians in South Africa to avoid volatile areas and risk areas until the atmosphere has calmed down. From his brief, the Foreign Affairs Minister says no Nigerian died in the xenophobic attack that started on Sunday. 70 suspects, according to South Africans, have been arrested from the attacks and the looting of shops. However, Daily Punch reports that a Nigerian, Idiare Rita, told Punch that her brother's electrical shop was looted and his wife was burned to ashes in the shop. This is very sad, and Punch has described the xenophobic attack as the new apartheid. Meanwhile, Nigeria, Malawi, and others have issued travel alerts and have also boycotted the World Economic Forum. Zambia's radio has banned the broadcast of South African music. Rwanda, DR Congo, Malawi have also withdrawn from the Economic Forum. A Nigerian envoy, dispatched by President Muhammadu Buhari, is expected to arrive South Africa today. And upon briefing and upon his return, he and the recalled Nigerian High Commissioner to South Africa will brief Mr. President, and President is expected probably to address the nation then. The African Union has condemned the fresh xenophobic attack in South Africa. The chairperson for the commission, Musa Faki Mahama, called on South Africa to ensure that all the perpetrators are brought to account. He said incidents of violence against nationals of fellow African countries are not acceptable. A retired diplomat, Ambassador Suleiman Dahiru, says Nigeria cannot send police to South Africa as it's been suggested. He says that this is because such agreement can only be possible if they were diplomatically, they are not diplomatically allowed because we don't have such agreement with South Africa. Nigeria is required to take strong action, but he cautions we must be very careful. He says Nigerians living in South Africa are estimated to be about 3 million, and most of them are doing their own businesses. They are not working for South African firms, quite unlike what we have in Nigeria here. Here in Nigeria, they are South African companies, but ironically, they are subsidiaries of Nigerians, owned by Nigerians. Meanwhile, the Air Peace Airline has offered to airlift Nigerians from South Africa. And he says those who want to take advantage of this offer made by the chairman of the airline should be ready tomorrow, Friday, September 6th. That is all the concerns about the xenophobic attack. But there's no doubt, across the world, there's been condemnation of the xenophobic attack in South Africa.
Yeah, Bayo, thanks a lot, for the details that you provided. Incidentally, it's one of the topics again we are returning to in our conversation segment. We had the topic yesterday, but I don't know. There's no census yet of the number of Nigerians living in South Africa, but certainly there are fewer than 3 million. Some say that there are fewer than 2 million who are in South Africa. And by the way, part of what has emerged is that almost, every negative activity is pinned on Nigerians. Yes. And then you have other nationals, who will claim that they are Nigerians. And nothing is done to verify the true identity of those persons. And then you have rioters being unleashed on innocent business persons who are, again, operating, as it were, at the bottom of the pyramid of the economy.
Yes. Again, it's a sad story of a few rotten eggs fouling the air surrounding everybody. And also, just this morning, I think I overheard on the radio that some of those who are drug peddlers that are claimed to be Nigerian are actually from another country.
Absolutely.
And we identified those countries. Yes. But, even when it comes to international crime, even in Europe, when some of them are caught, they tend to claim to be Nigerians. Actually, they are not Nigerians. So there's no doubt that there could be a few Nigerians too who are involved in those misdemeanors, but they are not above the law. They should be brought to the law. But it's not justifiable to use that as a premises to attack Nigerian businesses. And Nigerian businesses must also be circumspect. Where you have business established in area that is patently known for drug peddling, there's a tendency for you that you could be collectively attacked among those who are illegal drug peddlers. So that is another caution that needs to be taken.
The immediate instigation for the latest round of xenophobic attacks, was said to have been the killing of a taxi driver in a mall in Pretoria. And what has emerged is that there's a broadcast station in South Africa that claimed that it was a Nigerian who killed the taxi driver. The Nigerian Consulate General, of course, issued a rebuttal to that and asked for a retraction and apology. And it turned out that the drug peddlers or those who were engaged in illegal activities were certainly not Nigerians, and that they were having, running battles with the taxi drivers in the location. But it was claimed that, Nigerians did it, Nigerians did that. So it's the labeling that sometimes results in all of this. But as we said, these are issues, of course, we'll raise again with our colleagues. It isn't just Nigerians. Truckers, in other words, those who drive trucks, across various borders are also being harassed. I mean, South Africans claim that everybody is taking over their jobs, and some of those nationals from Congo, from Malawi, from Zambia and Tanzania are now saying, fine, if you are coming into our own country, bring your trucks to the border, leave your truck there, and then our own drivers will take the truck. If you don't allow our truckers to get into South Africa, your own truckers cannot get into our own territory.
And I think that's a good move, actually.
It's sad, but the lesson to learn from this is that for us, particularly in broadcasting cannot afford broadcast and be damned because of the extent to which it permeates society. And people will tend to react spontaneously. And that is the danger that South African broadcast station has foisted on that nation now. We need to be very careful. Newspapers can afford publish and be damned, but certainly not broadcast.
Thank you so much. We are pressed for time. Thank you so much for coming on the program. It's been a pleasure. We'll take a break right now. When we return, we'll begin our discussions on Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Advertising your goods and
services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. The station is on DSTV channel 419, GoTV channel 46, StarTimes channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are eager to promote your business, goods, and services. So, partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 0803-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we would say, we have two topics for conversation this morning. The first, of course, has to do with the reactions of the Nigerian government and indeed the Nigerian people to the xenophobic attacks against Nigerians, in particular in South Africa, by South Africans. We have with us in the studios three guests to deal with this particular subject matter. It's our pleasure to welcome back again to the studios this week Ambassador Usman Sarki. Ambassador Usman Sarki is Nigeria's former Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations in New York and is right now a directing staff at the Nigerian Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Kuru, near Jos. Ambassador Sarki, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. Also here with us in the studios, Honorable Ahmad Sajo, who is a former Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, sir.
In the studios. And Ajuri Ngelale, who is Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs, is attached to the Office of the Vice President. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right. Very quickly, beginning on the diplomatic front, let's bring in Ambassador Usman Sarki. Ambassador Usman Sarki, we saw a top-level meeting yesterday of the President, Vice President, and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Yes. And thereafter, a number of measures were rolled out. What's your assessment of the measures taken so far by the Nigerian authorities and indeed the Nigerian people?
Thank you very much. The measures taken so far have been very constructive, and also they are in keeping with the posture of Nigeria as the leading country in Africa in terms of keeping Africa's cohesion and also driving the process of integration in the continent. Nigeria cannot afford to see factors that divide Africans and also that will plant discord in the continent that will germinate towards division and features. So the President is keenly aware of the responsibility and position of Nigeria in Africa. We are looking at ourselves as the unifying country, if you like, as the belt buckle that keeps Africa together. Now, if we respond in an unprofessional and also not proportionate manner to incitements, provocations, and attacks against Nigerians, we are, in the long term and also in the long run, doing a great disservice to ourselves by alienating some portions of this continent and driving a wedge between us and countries in Africa. Let us remember that Africa is the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy. And for that, we have made a lot of sacrifices in the past, including taking on Western countries in the fight against apartheid and colonialism. So at this juncture, we are not going to be intemperate in our responses. So President has acted rationally, calmly, and also in a statesman-like manner by, first of all, he and the Vice President dousing tension in Nigeria and also sending envoys, a special envoy to South Africa to convey Nigerian government position on this issue and also to reiterate that it is unacceptable for the government of South Africa to stand by and watch when recurrent violence takes place against Nigerians and other Africans. The spirit of Africa, solidarity and oneness is being undermined in South Africa, of all places, that have come out of apartheid and racial segregation. So the steps taken by Mr. President and the government are appropriate, proportionate, and rational. And I think we should continue along that line. And also, the Vice President has called on Nigerians to respond and react in a rational and calm manner, not to attack businesses in Nigeria. That will impact upon Nigerians also, and also portray us in bad light as people who emotionally respond to issues without actually taking the time to devise constructive ways and methods to apprehend and deal with these issues. So the diplomatic front is being covered very, very adequately by Mr. President, Vice President, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I think we should continue along that track.
Okay, was the resolution arrived at by the Nigerian government, derived from the feedback from the envoy that was in South Africa?
Well, the envoy went, as you know, I think yesterday. So he is still there. I don't know if he has come back. But we have also recalled our High Commissioner, Ambassador Bala, my colleague and friend, for consultation. So various channels of information are coming to the government and to Mr. President through the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So the information will be sifted and ascertained, because you cannot, as a government, as a president, act on anything that you read in the media or on the social media. You have to verify. So I think that the meeting between Mr. President, His Excellency the Vice President, and the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs have brought out and crystallized issues around the xenophobic attacks that made it possible for Mr. President to take those decisions.
All right, Ambassador Usman Sarki, thank you very much. Ahmad Sajo, let's have your take on this. And in particular, respond to the views that have also been expressed by some commentators that precisely what Ambassador Usman Sarki is saying now is the reason why for over 10 years now, these xenophobic attacks have continued unabated. And just against the background that at the Yokohama TICAD 7 meeting, President Muhammadu Buhari discussed the same issue with the South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, only for Cyril Ramaphosa to return to South Africa. And then you had violence again unleashed on Nigerians.
Yeah, I think it's a very serious issue. Serious issue in the sense that here we are, as a country, trying as much as possible to ensure that we protect the oneness of Africa, and we serve as the driving force of an African unity that works for the African people. Here we are, a country that is trying to be, the big brother in Africa that we are. And I do remember very well that I used to have a classmate. We had a lot of students from South Africa when we were young. One of them was called Mbuyisa Makubu, the very person that picked up the first person killed during the Soweto riots. He was in the same class with me in Nigeria here. So we really had sacrificed a lot to ensure that South Africa gets to where it is today. And it will be very tragic for us to turn around and say, look, we want to destroy such a relationship because of... But what is happening is unacceptable, actually. It's we must also, as a country, begin to learn to protect our citizens wherever they are, wherever they are put in danger. And I think the steps taken by government so far are very commendable and they are timely. For example, the government not sending a delegation to the World Economic Forum in South Africa as a protest of what is happening is something highly, highly commendable. But again, I'm looking at it not just purely from the point of view of government, but even from the point of view of our own people. I feel very sad, and I'm saying it with all sincerity. I feel very sad that South Africans have destroyed businesses belonging to Nigerians and other foreigners in South Africa. The conversation is that it's only Nigerians. There are so many other countries that are affected. And these countries are also taking their own measures in their own ways. We must understand that the xenophobic attacks are on foreigners, in blanket, not just Nigerians. But we've taken our own steps. Government is taking its own step. But Nigerians in Nigeria are destroying businesses they assume belong to South Africa. But in actual fact, they're destroying Nigerian property here because some of these businesses rented Nigerian properties. If you destroy a house belonging to a Nigerian that is rented by a South African business, what you are destroying is that you are destroying the property of a Nigerian. So we're losing in South Africa and we're losing in Nigeria. When we burn tires on the road, we're destroying the quality, the road. We're destroying our own social infrastructure. I mean, so where is the gain? We must begin to look at things dispassionately. I'm glad that the government had recalled back our ambassador, like the diplomat had just told you, that we need first-hand information. What are the underlying issues? What are the undercurrents? It took some time, yes, but there is a time when we need to look at the real issues the way they are. And one of the issues, and I must tell you that it's our own failure, is that there's a lot of ethnic profiling and stereotyping in Nigeria. To the extent that foreigners also see us in that light now. They profile us. These people. We are yet to look at ourselves as, look, men, we are all Nigerians. Wherever you are, whatever ethnic groups you belong to, whatever region you come to, our diversity as a nation has a purpose. Just like your body, God has a purpose of making us different people, different ethnic groups, putting us in different locations. You do not expect somebody living in the mountain to be a good fisherman. Naturally, the fisherman must live close to a river. So, but if we harness our diversity and look at ourselves first as citizens of a country, we will not be profiled by outsiders. So I think we need to do a lot to, inform the South African authorities that, look, we are all Nigerians and Nigerians deserve protection by Nigeria and by countries where Nigerians are living, no matter what.
You say Nigerian authority would need to speak to the South African authorities. Let's face it, you see the measures already taken by the Inspector General of Police. Here in Nigeria's capital territory, you saw the deployment of contingents of policemen to various locations where there are South African businesses. But what has happened, according to various reports that have been received over the years, is that sometimes South African police officers attack, maim, and sometimes kill Nigerians on the one hand. And then on the other hand, they seem not to be concerned about law enforcement when those whom they refer to as miscreants and hooligans are pouring out into the streets to be attacking Nigerians.
Well, I agree with you absolutely. And these are conversations we need to carry. But it's not only, let us be very honest with ourselves. It's not only the police that are to blame sometimes when things like this happen. There are others that, like us now in the media, we don't give ourselves sufficient credit. Whatever the IGP is doing out there is being complemented by what we are doing in the media right now. Those of us that are engaging in conversations that actually, try to mobilize people to understand what is going on. We need to, at all times, put our emphasis on the use of force with equal emphasis on the use of public engagement so that we don't miss the point. In South Africa, what they're doing is that if you notice, you just tune into their broadcast stations. Sometimes they exacerbate the situation. They push the matter, to certain levels. So if we look at just the police, we think that it's only the police that is complacent. I think certain other strata of society within South Africa are also aiding and abetting this this crisis. And in our response as a people and as a government, we must point out all of these things. Here we are, NTA, owned by the federal government of Nigeria, trying to pacify people and trying to make people understand what is happening. Over there, they are not doing the same thing. We must insist that everything must be done, just like our IGP had mobilized policemen to secure businesses and things. They must mobilize their own policemen. Just like our broadcast stations are also mobilizing people to understand and keep the peace, they must also do the same thing. So we really need, in the conversations that the government is going to hold with the government of South Africa, based on the information we're going to receive, that we must look at all the areas that we find faults and address them.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll be coming to Ajuri Ngelele. You've, as a journalist and now Senior Special Assistant to the President of Public Affairs, you've covered xenophobic attacks in South Africa. I think I remember watching you on TV. So can you tell us why people target mostly Nigerians? Yes, Nigerians are the most traveled around the world. You know, we impact positively on other economies. Little skirmishes of, you know, violence and drugs and all that is just a little of what Nigerians have been able to contribute to South Africa. So what's your take and assessment on what is going on right now?
Thank you so much, Jumai. First of all, let me just say that we're stronger when we're together. And the reaction around the country has been such that you can see that there's a oneness in our hurt. Everybody from every part of the country, from every side of the political spectrum, everybody identifies with what's happening to Nigerians in South Africa because we recognize first that we're Nigerians. And I think that that's very important to point out. When we look at the reaction from President Muhammadu Buhari and this administration, I think there was very important outcomes that were taken just yesterday, both tangibly and intangibly. The tangible outcomes, obviously, as we know, there's the boycott now of the World Economic Forum, where Vice President Yemi Osinbajo was going to be present, but of course is now not going to be present. There was also a very clear red line drawn in public by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And in addition to that, we have recalled the High Commissioner to South Africa, Mr. Kabir Bala. We have, of course, as you've mentioned, already sent a special envoy to send the very strong message from President Muhammadu Buhari to President Cyril Ramaphosa. We're waiting for the special envoy to return. And it is on the basis of what information we receive upon the return of the special envoy that we will now move into phase 2 of our response. But I want to emphasize this morning that what we have seen so far is just phase 1 of the response. This is by no means a finite conclusion to this issue. It can be if the South African authorities respond appropriately, but if they fail to, we will escalate this to phase 2. I want to make sure that all of our people understand that this morning. Obviously, there's a plan in place for President Muhammadu Buhari to visit his South African counterpart next month. Obviously, some of these things are now being looked at to see if the South African authorities are willing to do what we have demanded, which is, first of all, we have demanded that there is immediate and full and comprehensive compensation for every Nigerian who lost any kind of property in the recent attacks. We're demanding full justice for every Nigerian who has been attacked or killed in South Africa in recent times under the guise of these xenophobic attacks. And like I said, that is going to be looked at again if the special envoy comes back with information that Mr. President is not pleased with. The second thing is, you know, our people, we need to use this opportunity to unite. Yes, we have the oneness in terms of our hurt, but how we express that hurt must be unanimous. We cannot afford to undermine our own moral credibility by engaging in the kinds of criminal activities that the South Africans are engaging in. Because ultimately, being a leader in the African continent, as this nation is not a function of having the largest population or just having the largest economy. It's also a function of how we handle adversity when we're under attack. And ultimately, that's not going to send a message just to the South Africans. It's also going to send a message to the rest of the continent and the world that indeed, if you touch one Nigerian, you're touching all of us. And that's very important. The last thing I would touch is the response in terms of security. We have reports, obviously, that 2 days ago in Lagos, there were a series of attacks on ShopRite and some other businesses, even in Ibadan as well, and some other parts of the country. Some were forestalled, some were mitigated, but there were attacks. We had a situation where a Nigerian shop owner who owns a store called Timekeeper Store in a shopping center that also housed a ShopRite. That store, owned by a Nigerian, was ransacked by Nigerians, was looted to the tune of 200 million naira worth of goods stolen. So now we're not just talking about attacks, we're actually talking about full-blown criminal activity on the part of our own people in response to this. We cannot afford these types of stains on our national identity. We can't, because ultimately we have to be able to rise above and show that we are not the same type of people as those who attacked us in South Africa. In response to that, the Inspector General of Police has placed the zonal assistant inspector generals of police on red alert, along with the commissioners of police. We have seen the arrests now of about 125 suspects that were involved in the skirmishes around the country, and we expect that there would be no further incidents, and we ask our people, please, to hold their peace and ensure that we trust the federal government of Nigeria to deal with this problem once and for all.
All right, but thank you very much. Ambassador Usman Sarki, back to you. We've already talked about Nigerian government unilateral response to what is playing out in South Africa against Nigerians. But there have also been reports pertaining to multilateral actions. Yeah. We have seen what, of course, there have also been demonstrations in Zambia, but the leaders of Rwanda, Congo, and Malawi have pulled out of the World Economic Forum. Yeah. There are also reports of truckers from other countries who are threatening South African truckers from getting into their own territory on account of the frequent attacks that these truckers come under. There have been suggestions that the AU ought to step into this because the matter has lingered on for over a decade. Yeah. There is no end in sight, and I'm sure that you are aware of the various videos that have been in circulation. Those videos have not been denied, showing complicity, incitement by South African officials, including the Deputy Minister of Police Affairs in South Africa, giving credence to the impression that is now widespread that the South African elite class, this black elite class, is complicitous in these xenophobic attacks. Right. What, in your opinion, should be the multilateral response, say from the AU, as to what is going on beyond just issuing statements and condemning as we have seen over the past 11 years?
Thank you very much. Now, Nigeria is not helpless completely, and we have not run out of options. The multilateral approach that you quite rightly pointed out is there. We have instruments and mechanisms that we could invoke and use towards putting pressure on South Africa to live up to the expectations not only of Africans but of the world, for their citizens and the government to respond, to behave appropriately. Number one, in 2001, the entire world gathered in Durban to negotiate, that is under the World Conference on Racism, to negotiate the Durban Declaration and Program of Action on racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia. That document exists still, and its contents are applicable to South Africa as well as to all other countries. Xenophobia is specifically mentioned because of these type of attacks, singling out national of another country to attack them on the basis of rationalization of certain perceptions and ideas against those people. The African Union has a number of processes and also decisions and declarations in place, including the Constitutive Act of the African Union, the act that established the African Commission of Human and People's Rights, and also the African Human and People's Rights, the court in Banjul. All these are instruments available to us that we could invoke in order to bring South African officials to book. Beyond that, the International Criminal Court can be approached for them to look into this case whereby senior officials of a government are complicit in incitement to violence. This is a justiciable act, a criminal act on which we can now call upon the rest of the international community to intervene. Now, xenophobia has a long history, but let us look at what happened under Nazi Germany. That's what they call Kristallnacht, when the Nazi government, the state, organized systematic attacks against Jewish-owned property, shops, businesses, and other things, in which even murders took place. The Nuremberg Tribunal, after the Second World War in 1945, included those incidents as part of the criminal actions for which the Nazi leaders were liable. We have to now go and look at all the extant instruments under international law and also African charters and protocols that exist in terms of deterring racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia, and apply them to South Africa. The South Africans must realize that their actions actually tie the hands of Nigeria and other African countries in discussing racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia in Europe against migrants, against refugees, and people of African descent. If we treat ourselves, each other in South Africa in this manner, what moral right do we have to go and address incidents of this nature taking place against black people, against Africans in other parts of the world? I think Nigeria has now taken a very, very serious perception of this. Mr. President, the Vice President, the Minister of Foreign Affairs are using all diplomatic channels, some known to us and others under wraps in terms of confidentiality, and you don't reveal all your cards when you are dealing with incidents like that. So let us give the opportunity to our leaders to resolve this impasse or this issue in a sustainable way. But we must remind South Africans their commitment under the Durban Declaration on racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia to treat Nigerians and other Africans decently, and wherever their officials are involved, for these officials to be prosecuted. The last point I would raise is that I was the director, Southern African Affairs Department. That was my last post in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before I retired. 2016, I think there was this incident of xenophobic attacks, and we proposed that we should enter into an agreement, bilateral agreement with South Africa on specifically addressing issue of xenophobia, in which matters related to compensation will also be endorsed and signed between the two countries. We prepared this. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Geoffrey Onyama, went. He met with the South African Minister of Foreign Affairs, a lady. He deposited that document with her, expecting that it will be signed and sealed by the government. But in the end, the South Africans reneged. They did not sign it. I don't know if they have now, but they did not. So in our mechanisms that we will deploy, we have regional, international legal instruments and conventions. And also, I think the National Assembly should be brought on board so that at Interparliamentary Union and also the African Parliamentary Union and other meetings of the parliamentarians, these things will be discussed.
Ambassador Usman Sarki, I'm sorry to jump in here because you said we have two topics for conversation this morning. But the information that you have given and indeed the views expressed by the other guests are noted. But what is also emerging from all of this evaluation of xenophobic attacks is a certain narrative being put out there by, it is said, the black South African elite, that other Africans who have come into South Africa are the ones who are stealing your jobs. You know, the truckers, they say if you are a Meshai or you are running a shipment, you are the one, you have taken over their jobs, and that, you know, you are the cause of their, that other Africans are the cause of their misery. And that is why it's so easy, you know, for them to be pushed out there to strike against other nationals, in particular Nigerians. Jury.
You know, Kingsley, that's a really important point. You know, Jumai touched on the fact that I had done some previous reporting on this issue. One of the major findings was that you would find that during the times of the campaigns, political campaigns within the ANC in South Africa, they would go to particularly rural communities. They had a rural message, they had an urban message. And in their rural messaging, they would essentially be scapegoating African immigrants on the issues of, again, they're taking your job opportunities, they're oppressing our people economically, etc. These are real issues and they are factual matters. And because of those realities, I want our people to also understand this morning that this administration is aware of that. We are also aware of the most recent comments made by the Deputy Minister of Police Affairs in South Africa to the effect that Nigerians or African immigrants have taken up to, I think he said, 80% of some of their cities, and that essentially in the state opinion that they're trying to now push back against some sort of new takeover. Before they say it's the white minorities, and now they're saying it's African immigrants. We obviously thoroughly reject that view. We know that it's not true, both in terms of the numbers and in terms of our intent. We also know that there are attempts within the South African media to paint all Nigerians with one brush. They will emphasize one incident where maybe an African immigrant did something wrong and try to blow that up into a popular perception of that particular nationality. We know that is happening. These are some of the measures, these are some of the issues that are being discussed at the highest level. And we want to just assure Nigerians that as these issues are taken at the presidential level, they're discussed at the presidential level, we've reached the point of no return now. There's no going back. They're either going to be addressed or they're not, and that's the way it is.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sajo, what other definitive measures do you expect from Nigeria to take under these circumstances right now? You have to be quick about it because we're running out of time.
Like the Chinese, in every crisis I see both danger and opportunity. This crisis is giving us an opportunity. One, Nigerians are unanimous in supporting the government of the President Muhammadu Buhari in the measures he is taking. And we must consolidate on that unanimity. And, you know, we have now found a common ground. Let us build on that common ground to look at ourselves as citizens protected by a government that we support. Secondly, I see an opportunity also again for us to redefine our engagements with other countries vis-a-vis the interests of Nigerians. We must push that to its logical conclusion. The document he's talking about, the ambassador is talking about signing, about compensation and the rest. I think we must follow it to its logical conclusion and ensure that all instrumentalities of law enforcement at the international level are utilized to make sure that we get this. And then now we also need to begin to sensitize our own people. You've seen very recently that some Nigerians have started behaving in a very unruly manner outside our shores. If we display violence as our own character, people will respond to us with violence. So the best thing we must do is that we must begin to show ourselves as people who are civilized and reasonable, and people who should be addressed with respect wherever we are. And we must begin to buy that respect to ourselves by respecting ourselves wherever we find ourselves.
All right, Honorable Ahmad Sajo, public affairs analyst and one-time commissioner for information in Adamawa State, we'd like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Appreciation also to Ajuri Ngelale, who is SSA to the President, and Public Affairs is attached to the Office of the Vice President. Jury, thank you very much for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kingston.
And also a deep appreciation to Ambassador Usman Sarki, of course, regular face on Good Morning Nigeria, directing staff now at NIPS, Kuru, near Jos. Excellency, thank you for being with us on Good
Thank
Morning
you,
Nigeria.
sir. My pleasure.
All right, so we take a short break now. When we return, of course, we shall be dealing with the partial closure of Nigeria's borders with our neighbors, in particular, the notorious Seme and Idiroko borders, where you have a lot of smuggling activities.
Chief. Good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit day, my body day for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me job questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Advertising your goods and services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. The station is on DSTV channel 419, GoTV channel 46, StarTimes channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are eager to promote your business, goods, and services. So partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 0803-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
Welcome back. Before we introduce our guests in the studio to take us through the matters arising from the current partial closure of land border, which is in its second week, let's take a background by Victor Azu.
Recently, Nigeria's border with the Benin Republic was partially closed, a situation President Muhammadu Buhari explained became necessary as a result of massive smuggling activities, especially of rice, taking place on that corridor. This, he said, has become a threat to self-sufficiency already attained due to his administration's agricultural policies. The restriction followed the joint border security exercise ordered by the government and aimed at securing Nigeria's land and maritime borders. The exercise, codenamed X-Swift Response, was jointly conducted by the Customs, Immigration, Police and Military personnel, coordinated by the Office of the National Security Advisor. The limited closure of the country's western border was to allow Nigeria's security forces develop a strategy on how to stem the dangerous trend and its wider ramifications. 2 weeks after, the questions on the lips of Nigerians include: what has been the impact of the partial border closure and for how long will it remain closed? Are there other borders closed apart from the semi-border? Nigeria is said to have porous borders. What can further be done to curb smuggling in Nigeria? These are some of the questions begging for answers on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Victor Azu, for that background. We have with us in the studios the Deputy Comptroller of Customs. He is Joseph Atta, to discuss this issue in greater detail. DC, a pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
It's my pleasure. Good morning.
Okay, and also joining us via Skype, he's somewhere in Ghana, usually a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria whenever we are discussing trade issues. Ken Ukoha is President, National Association of Nigerian Traders. Mr. Ken Ukoha is also a lawyer. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, now let's begin with the Deputy Comptroller of Customs, Joseph Atta. You listened, of course, to the background report by our correspondent, Victor Azu, where we say there is a partial closure. Exactly what is happening at the borders at the moment?
Well, yeah, it's indeed a partial closure to the extent that human beings can move in and out. What's happening is that there is a rigorous, very, very decisive action by joint security forces in this country to sanitize our borders. The idea is to raise up our state of preparedness against trans-border crimes and criminalities, talking about terrorism, arms smuggling, drug trafficking, illegal migration, all of which have added up to make the lives of Nigerians less secured. So there is a need to take actions that will sanitize Nigeria, make our borders safe, and that's what the Office of the National Security Advisor, after a painstaking analysis of security situations around our borderlines, pulled security agencies together, led by, of course, the Nigerian Customs Service, immigration, armed forces, and operatives of intelligence agencies to ensure that those who do not wish us well, those who take advantage of our porous border, no longer have it easy.
Okay, Mr. Joseph Atta, you see, you said you don't like the porous borders that we use. What word would you like?
No. What I was saying before we kicked off was that there is this copious and almost exaggerated reference to semi-border.
Okay.
And we are doing this in 4 geopolitical zones of this country. That's just about 25 states. So you can't be talking too much about semi-border to the detriment of what is happening in Jibia, in Kamba, in Ilela, in Mfum, and so many others. Lest somebody begin to think that a particular border or a particular country is the target. That's not the intention.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, you mentioned Ilela. Ilela is in Sokoto. Jibia is in Katsina. Mfum and the others. Where are they located?
Mfum is around Cross River side. That's with Cameroon. So we are doing this. It will affect Benin Republic, Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and all that. But everybody seems to think it's about Seme. It's about Benin Republic, and that's not true.
Yeah, but it's also a notorious fact. Some persons would say that the western flank of Nigeria's land borders is the most convenient for the smugglers, whether a Diroko or Seme. Isn't that a fact?
Well, there are smuggling everywhere. If you take statistics of seizures from the northern part of this country, especially from Jibia side, that's Katsina State side and all that, I will agree to the fact that yes, Seme and Idiroko put together could represent a higher volume, but that does not take away the fact that things that could compromise national security, compromise national economy, take place in other places. So let's not lose sight of these things.
Well, let's get it a bit clearer now. The lead agency for enforcing or managing the partial border closure is the Nigerian Customs Service. And the reasons you are saying are not just economic, but also clearly security.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the situation rather with regard to the endangerment of Nigeria's security from and across the borders with these our neighbors?
Well, those things are obvious. I think anybody that lives in this country in the last 1, 2, 3 years, we attest to the fact that there are emerging and disturbing security situations, talking about influx of hard drugs or all these illicit drugs. Even the sheer volume of seizures that the Nigerian Customs Service have made in recent times, we clearly tell you that, look, this is what Customs have been able to do. What of those ones that Customs may have not been able to see or catch? What of those ones that have taken advantage of the porous border? And you know Nigeria is a big country. You have a long, widening, largely porous borderlines, to the extent that even all the custom officers and men were to come together and hold hands. They will not even be able to reach half. So pulling these security forces together means increased number of manpower, increased equipment, increased technology, and now, within these 2 weeks, we are able to reach or access those places that were hitherto not being accessed by the Nigerian Customs Service. To that extent, some of those that used to take advantage of these places are packed up. They have run away, and within 2 weeks, you need to know the statistics of the achievements already recorded. As I speak with you, we've recorded 112 suspects. Out of these 112 suspects, 33 are illegal migrants. You only need to imagine the sheer consequences of maybe 7 or 8 out of these 33 coming into Nigeria with the mindset to cause mayhem. So this exercise would have already saved a lot in terms of lives and properties and all that would have been lost to that. We've made over 5,000 bags of rice, sugar, petroleum, in their thousands. So the achievements keep coming in, and the Office of the National Security Advisor is taking stock of all these records, all these reports, observations, intelligence that is flowing in, and making analysis of it. Going forward, certain appropriate decisions will be taken to better secure our borders. Note that a safe border is a safe nation.
Thank you so much. We would like to inform you that joining us from our Lagos Network Center is Muda Yusuf, Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's a known fact that when we close borders in this country, there's a lot of impact on the economy. And usually most of these things are imported into Nigeria now, are now very expensive, and you know, there's no way it can get into Nigeria. So what is the economic impact of the closure of the borders?
Yeah, the economic impact is quite enormous. But first, let me say that what is happening is also a kind of indictment on the institutions that are statutorily responsible for managing our borders. I've engaged the Customs PRO, who is there in your studio, my very good friend, on these issues one-on-one, and I've expressed to him the challenges that businesses are facing as a result of this. It is good, of course, to talk about what has been achieved, but it is also important to look at what is costing businesses and what is costing the economy. Right now, there are quite a number, because this is not just about imports. It's also affecting exports. A few days ago, one of the companies here in Lagos, a multinational company, told me that about 6 or 7 of their trucks that are exporting manufactured products from Nigeria to the neighboring countries have been stuck at the borders. And from Lagos to many of these other African countries, there are a lot of informal exports that is going on. People taking products on daily basis from Lagos to many of these African and West African countries. So there are quite a lot of businesses, legitimate businesses,
that are being affected by this situation. And this has implications, first, for the livelihood of those who are involved in this business. It's affecting our exports. And Seme-Border is one of the biggest sources of revenue in terms of land border for government. Because, I mean, the government is complaining about issues of revenue. We know security is important, but you need revenue to also drive the economy. So it has implications even for revenue. So all of these things are things that we need to look at properly. If there are challenges at the border, I think the first place to start is to look at the institutions that are manning the border. If you now have to be deploying the military, the national security advisor to now take over the border, I think it's a major indictment on both the Nigeria Customs Service and the Nigeria Immigration Service. So we need to also see what we can do to ensure that our institutions do what they are supposed to do. The scale of smuggling that takes place, especially around the Diroko and Seme-Border, cannot happen without connivance of some officials at the border. Because we are talking about trucks moving in goods that are not supposed to come in and so on and so forth. And we haven't seen any sanction, any serious sanction that is commensurate to the scale of inadequacies that we see at the borders. In terms of even security, the few times that arms have been seized, the major ones were actually from the seaports. There was a report, and we saw everything on television, of the large amount of arms and ammunition that were illegally imported, brought into the country through the seaport, I think Tinkan Island ports. So what has happened to those who committed these offenses? How many smugglers have you actually brought to book? So these are issues, these are fundamental issues. Because if you have a situation, we say that people are flouting the law, they are infringing on the law, and there are no consequences for those who are doing these things, either for those who are conniving with them or those who are even caught. It's not proportional. So we need to deal with institutionalized, because when you take these kind of actions, sometimes the cost is much more than the benefits. And we also need to deal with issues of productivity within our economy. We need to bring down the cost of production within our economy. We need to deal with the issues of even cost of transportation. The bulk of domestic rice that is produced is basically in the northern part of the country. How much will it cost to bring rice from Kebbi and from all these other states to Lagos, for instance, or to the east or to the west, or from either Ebonyi to Lagos? So we need to deal with these issues in a multidimensional way. For as long as we have very sharp disparities in prices, in tariffs, and all of that, we continue to have this kind of problem. So we need to look at institutional problem. We need to look at policy issues around the issues of trade and all of that. But right now, I think the solution to this problem is not to go and close the border, because the cost to the economy is much more than the benefit, in my view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muda Yusuf, for the points that you have raised. We have had Mr. Ken Ukoha on standby via Skype from Ghana. We still just keep him for a while so that we quickly deal with some of the issues that Muda Yusuf raised for purposes of clarification. You talked about, internal pricing mechanisms arising from cost of transportation, for instance, and then the impact that will have on rice. Some other persons would argue that, fine, suppose the producers of rice in India and Thailand are being subsidized, and then you get a policy of dumping, and then smuggling through our various borders. That's one point. But more crucially, the first point you indicated that, businesses are suffering, we cannot export our goods, we cannot bring in our imports through the land borders. So I mean, let's get rid of this. Some persons have argued that in the past, it is pressures of this nature that businesses are suffering that would often lead to a relaxation of tough measures by the security agencies, and before we know it, we are back to square one. Economic sabotage takes place, and then the security threats continue to impact everybody, including the business organizations. What's your reaction, Mr. Yusuf?
We should not visit the failure of institutions on the citizens. We have the Nigeria Customs Service. We have our justice system. We have Nigeria Immigration Service. The purposes of an institution is to ensure compliance with the regulations and the rules of a country, to ensure compliance. And if there are no compliance, we have a duty to ensure that there are sufficient deterrent sanctions. But we cannot say because institutions of state are failing in their responsibilities, then we take actions that will be punitive to innocent people. That is my argument. It's not as if the business community supports, endorse, or condone unethical practices, bringing in of goods that are not supposed to come in, sabotaging the economy. No. We have to recognize that there are legitimate businesses taking place across the border. And we cannot say that because the institutions are failing in their duties, we now visit the consequences of that on the innocent people. That is my argument. Because I told you, each time we hear stories about smuggling, arms have been smuggled, people have been caught. What has happened to these people? How many of them have gone to jail? Because there has to be consequences for actions. And that is the way we can get people to behave properly, whether they are in the business community or elsewhere. There has to be sanctions. But you cannot take this kind of sweeping actions that hurts everybody. And in any case, before you know it, these smugglers will devise other means. Because they are very ingenious, they will devise other means to do this. So it is those who are compliant, doing normal businesses, that will continue to suffer. And I must say that there is also issues of connivance between some agencies of government and some of these smugglers. So we need to deploy a lot of intelligence. We need to deploy technology. I mean, for a long time, scanners were not working, either at the seaports or even at the borders. These are technology that can use to quickly deal with issues of screening, knowing what containers are coming in. We can also use drones. We can use a whole lot of things to make sure that we track down those who are violating this. But in my view, the solution is not just to close the border entirely, because this is almost a total closure. Because no goods, nothing can move across the borders.
Okay, Mr. Muda Yusuf, thank you very much. Some of the issues you raised, of course, we'll push them to Deputy Controller to respond to them. After we get the reactions from Ken Okoha, who is still with us via Skype. You can see him there in the middle of the screen. Mr. Ken Okoha, first give us your general reaction to the partial land border closure. And while doing that, also respond to this view that some traders, who probably are also members of your association, are indeed these smugglers that have been targeted by the partial land closure.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I've listened to my colleagues from the custom and Muda, my friend from the Lagos Chamber of Commerce. And quite frankly, I think both sides are making a lot of sense out of the whole issue. But I think it's important for us to balance the subject of security on one hand and the facilitation of trade and the movement and free movement of persons on the other hand. Now, the balancing act here, if you ask me, would be that will result in a decision or resolution that one would need to be alive before you do business. So security takes an upper hand. And I thought that this is exactly what the motivation for the partial closure, in quote, partial closure of the borders would have been, linked to. I thought the government would have said it is for security, knowing what we are facing at this particular moment. And everybody would understand this. Now, if you take a look at the subject that we are dealing with, we have insecurity in our hands, we have the the movement of small arms and ammunitions across the border. We have insurgency in our hands. We have terrorists, sometimes unguarded, and also have issues of drug peddling. Not only the insecurity, drug peddling across the border. I can tell you, we sat down and enumerated all of these things, and we decided that we have not. We just have to give support to government at this particular time. And by the way, Kingsley, don't forget that we have been crucifying the customs and the government or law enforcement agents for a long time, that they don't appear to know their job, and the borders are porous, and everybody has been lamenting the borders are porous and all that. I think it is time for us to also strike a balance. If the customs have risen up, if the security agencies have risen up now to say, look, enough of this porosity, let us wake up, so be it, so that we have some level of security. However, I think that the ratio decidendi of this subject is that this sends a strong signal to drug peddlers, to smugglers, to illicit fake drug, importers, as well as human traffickers, because all of these things are, we need to look at this beyond the subject of importation and export of goods and commodities. I am looking at it from the security angle. It has affected many of our members, and I agree totally. And one area I agree with Muda is the issue of sanction mechanism, penalty. And, we need to see that at the end of this exercise, that this is the number of people that we are, caught. This is the number of people apprehended, and this is a sanction meted on them. This is prosecution. And we want to see that. And that would now serve as a deterrence. But then, he has also raised the issue of scanners and technology and cameras. Why are these things not working? This is the time we should hold government accountable. The law enforcement agencies must make sure that, government should make sure that these things are working at this particular time. And we must also look at the revenue implications. I think at the end of this exercise, government should sit down with the private sector to do a cost and benefit analysis of this exercise. And we need to find out how much revenue did we get, how much was the shortfall of revenue, how much did the exporters lose, what is the consequences or implications on consumer welfare, what are the implications on the sufferings of the people, so that we will know next time how we're going to tweak this, how we're going to, modulate this in a way that all of these things will be reduced. And in fact, we must get, I must give it to Muda again, that there are some legitimate businesses that have lost quite a lot. And I want to mention Cabre, for instance. I had a meeting with them the other day, and some of our members too. I had meetings, and some of the raw materials that they use in their production come in from across the border from neighboring countries. Now, it affects employment, it affects the income of people, it affects the company, it affects tax payment from that company to the government. These things must be taken up holistically. And I think that, again, this must be looked at from the angle of procedure. And by this I mean, Nigeria is a signatory to the ETLS protocol. Nigeria is a signatory to the ECOWAS treaty. And there are some protocols that are adjoined to this particular, these particular treaties and the protocols. And now, for instance, we have what we call defense mechanisms and defense measures, anti-dumping measures. If you allege that, the country has porous borders and that there is a dumping of smuggled goods on the economy, there you must be prepared also to lay your facts bare. There are procedures meant for this. Take, for instance, Regulation C/6/06/13 of the Protocol on Anti-Dumping provides that you must be able to articulate all of the information that is required and send this to ECOWAS prior to any action. In fact, Article 4 of that gives conditions that must apply, and that you must also apply for this kind of exercise from ECOWAS. Not that you are the one, because you are the one, the country is the one that willingly signed onto these treaties. And that's why some of us are cautioning, before we fully engage in the AFCFTA, even though this is also a test to it, we must get our eyes open and know what we are signing. The applications, the quantifications, and then the modus operandi of the exercise must not inflict injury on the other countries that you are locking up, because there are other countries also who are bringing goods.
I'm sorry, Ken Okoha, please, let's say if the Skype connection with you is still fine. I would like you to also respond to this view that is very common amongst Nigerians. Where then would your national interests lie? You're talking about the fact that Nigeria is signatory to a number of these treaties. That's fine. But what should be the national action in the face of relentless battering of the domestic economy? Let's give an example with Benin Republic. And incidentally, the president of Benin Republic had a meeting on the sidelines with President Muhammadu Buhari in Yokohama at Tikat 7. Even if the Beninois population, I'm not quite sure how many they are, even if they were to be eating rice, every hour, just be eating rice every hour, the amount of rice that gets into their ports will obviously be more than sufficient for them to be eating every hour. And it is said that that rice, the destination for it, is Nigeria with a population of nearly 200 million, which of course will also make nonsense ultimately of our determination as a country to be self-sufficient in rice production and therefore save us excess expenditure on forex in terms of importing rice. So if you have all kinds of goods and services that are all kinds of goods, rice in particular, why can't Nigeria take an action such as what is happening now, partial closure of the land border to ensure that matters are streamlined and smugglers are dealt with. And then the responsibility of the corridor state, say Benin Republic. Why would Benin Republic, for instance, make itself a corridor for the smuggling of all kinds of items into a friendly neighbor, a big neighbor like Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I think my response is straightforward. This is the reason why, before we engage in any kind of agreement, we must understand legally that we are relinquishing part of our sovereignty to that particular enclave. And that is the essence of international treaty. So in this wise, every economic or trade, related agreement or treaty must be ready for a party to donate such level of that sovereignty to the extra body. Now, in this case, Nigeria has accepted, with other 14 members that are making it 15, to accede into ECOWAS as a treaty. However, once you are donating this sovereignty, there are also leeways provided. Take a look at the WTO, for instance. WTO provides for, Article 19, Article 7, Article 8, and Article 6 of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, provides for the same defense mechanisms, that in case there is serious injury or threat to serious injury on your economy, you may take actions. But in taking the actions, there are procedures. Now, look at what you mentioned about rice. do we have, number one, there are provisions for investigations. In Regulation C/4/06/13 on safeguard measures on the ECOWAS protocol, there are conditions there. Article 5 of that particular regulation talks about 10 things that you need to look at as your proof of evidence that must be submitted to ECOWAS. It makes it in a way that it becomes stringent and very clear anyway. Number one is the production capacity of that country, who is claiming, for instance, in this case, Benin Republic, claiming that they are producing rice. The production capacity, the capacity utilization, the stock of the products, the sales of the product, the market share of rice in Benin Republic, the profits there, the return on investment, employment, you have liquidity share, and you have price. All of these 10 indicators are things that, gives you the proof, the evidence to weigh on them, and then submit to that.
Oh, my. Ken Okoa, well, thanks. Very quickly, let's return to Muda Yusuf in Lagos, LCCI, that's Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I just would like to ask this question. I presume, Mr. Yusuf, that logistics is a critical part of your chamber in terms of the activities that your members would often engage in. As you said, you have trucks that are stuck at the border now and are unable to deliver their supplies that have been produced in Nigeria to their neighbors. I was just wondering, this is also a matter also for the customs to take up. How much engagement is there with NATO, that is those who own the trucks, and it's not you, that is the road transport workers, in terms of winning them off? Because it is their trucks and it is their drivers that are used for these smuggling activities. Let them undertake their legitimate businesses. I'm sure that nobody will quarrel with that. But for the illicit activities of smuggling, for which trucks and drivers are utilized, how much of engagement does the chamber, as I said, assuming logistics is part of your undertaking or part of your interest, which should be anyway, how much of engagement goes on with these bodies?
Thank you very much. Well, there are a lot of engagements that takes place between the chamber movement and organizations like NATO and others who are involved in logistics. But, in every system, there will be a percentage, even though they may be small, of people who are criminally minded. There will always be a percentage of people who will not be compliant. So the fact that those small percentage perpetrate this kind of illegal activities should not be made, should not subject the entire operators into this kind of hardship. And that is why I keep talking about strengthening our institutions. If we strengthen institutions, those few criminal elements within the system, if they are dealt with, and it is very clear that if you commit these offenses, this is the consequences, and people see it, and the punishments are deterrent enough, we will be getting somewhere. But if you have situations where these few criminal elements are perpetrating these activities, and sometimes they seem to even be making more money than those who are doing legitimate business. If you have that kind of situations, this kind of activity will continue to grow. That is what has led to the growth in all this smuggling, escalation of smuggling, and all of that. We have so much smuggling. How many smugglers have been sentenced to jail? How many of them have been really dealt with? That is commensurate to the number and the scale of smuggling that we see. So for us, there are engagements around all of these things. We also engage with customs. But just as I said, we need to deal with these issues in a multidimensional and strategic way. We need to strengthen productivity within this economy. The cost of production in this economy is too high. And if your costs are too high, and you have this kind of porous border, you have a challenge of smuggling. We also need to look at our trade policy. We need to look at our tariffs so that we don't have a tariff regime that is too, where the differential is too much, given the weaknesses we have with the institutions and given the porosity of the borders. So in all of this, we also need trade experts to be part of this engagement, to be part of this discussion, so that we can have a solution that is sustainable. But we need to create an environment that will make our domestic producers, domestic investors also more competitive, so that we can narrow the gap in terms of pricing and all of that. I take the point you made about the fact that there could be dumping and all of that. But if you're able to narrow the gap in pricing, the pressure of smuggling will reduce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muda Yusuf, Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. You joined us from Lagos Network Studios. Thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. All right, so let's return to Joseph Atta, who is Deputy Comptroller of Customs. There are a number of issues that have been raised, but we can actually frame them into three for you to respond to. One, Muda Yusuf raised the issue of technology, emphasized also by Ken Okoha. What appears to be going on now will still be sight and sound and touch and smell. What is happening? Scanners and cameras. At the ports the other time, it was said that, oh, the scanner had broken down. How much is a scanner? How much does it cost to fix a scanner that goes bad? That's one. Second issue also has to do with the allegation of connivance between smugglers and some custom officers. And the third one is engagement with truck transport owners and then the drivers themselves who are used for the illicit activities across the land borders.
Well, thank you very much. Just as he said, the DG LCCI, me and him, we've talked a number of times on these issues, except that this is now more public than the ones we've had privately. I do appreciate the fact that in a national discourse, once personal interest is at stake, it appears convenient to pick out an agency of government and put the whole blame on. His second intervention is much more all-encompassing. He raised a number of issues, and I want to address the one he asked about what has happened to issues associated with the arms seized, because that's a very serious issue. When you're talking about arms, you're talking about national security and all that. The Nigerian Customs Service, as presently constituted, under the leadership of Colonel Hamid Ibrahim Ali, retired, which he knows will not allow something as sensitive as that to be swept under the carpet. He knows that investigations have been completed. He knows that prosecution is ongoing in the Federal High Court in Lagos. And what happened to our officers? In the course of investigation, 5 officers were indicted, not because they were really involved in either importation or whatever, but just because in the course of investigation, there were reasons to believe that they did not exercise enough due diligence in either examination or processing documentation. These officers were dismissed and handed over to be prosecuted along with those behind the importation. This is in public domain. It was made public. And those people, the officers that intercepted the container, especially the one that contained the 661 pump action rifle that exited Apapa and was intercepted around Mile 2, those 7 officers were promoted and decorated with new ranks. So we have a regime that punishes you for doing wrong and reward you for doing good. He knows this. So asking what has happened to that would not be fair to customs, especially
if I might
not the customs of today.
come in here, let's talk about the night smuggling and the impact on those smuggling goods across the border during the night. They make so much business from that. Briefly.
That is why I say his second intervention seemed to me like a tone down. When he now said, look, we have to address this from all perspectives. It has to be all encompassing. And he also admitted to the fact that even amongst his people, there are few deviants who will not want to play by the rules. And it is those deviants who will compromise the deviants also in our system, who will also recruit some border community dwellers. Look, the biggest challenge is sometimes it's even the border community. It is those deviants in the system who will buy handsets, buy phones, and share to people at the border community, some of the people there who are ready to compromise, who will monitor our anti-smuggling operatives and begin to call the smugglers. Look, this patrol team, they've just passed through this village now. They're going this way. If you're coming, don't follow here. Follow the other side. You bust in that village and you hit the highway. So those are the kind of things you see in the town and you say, oh, where were the customs when this thing passed?
All right, so that's also a security perspective to border policing. Thank you very much.
Technology.
Yes, very quickly, because we need to take the tweets now and then sign off because we have very little time.
The gains from this joint security exercise will be that from the intelligence, from the observation, from the seizures, from the reports that are getting into the office of the National Security Advisor, a very critical analysis will be made, decisions will be taken going forward, including acquisition of non-intrusive equipment for these borders. As regards ports, of course, I know already plans are already at advanced stage. I think contacts have already been made. Very soon, more scanners will be installed.
That has been on. All those plans have been on for the past 2 years or more. I mean, we discussed that on Good Morning Nigeria sometime in the past. Very quickly, Law Alpha CEO has this tweet. It says the partial closure of the notorious Seme border recently is a good development. It's not just Seme that is just partially closed, but said it should not be sustained as small legitimate businesses have been grounded. Of course, you listened to what the customs man said. There are security issues also involved with this. Thoroughly monitoring and adequately policing the borders would have been a better option to save genuine users of the borders.
And Mike Anyako tweets, the partial closure of Seme border is a welcome development. Government had been losing a lot of revenue from the nefarious activities of smugglers who are very daring and at times collude with officials. Nigeria cannot be a market for dumping of all kinds of goods from different parts of the world.
Now, the partial closure is a good omen, according to Chris Simeon, but it may likely affect economic activities of both Nigeria and Benin, as well as other neighboring countries. Just like Seme border, the closure of Sokoto-Ilela border has brought economic activities in the area to a halt. Not all goods that come into the country are smuggled.
And Taiwo tweets, the government decision is the way to grow our economy. Agro-processors and others involved in the rice value chain should be well funded to optimize the huge opportunities in the rice consumption gap. Nigerians should also embrace the eat what you produce culture.
Mashallah, Kemu, closing the Seme border is a right move by the federal government. The border is not closed, by the way. It's partial closure of all land borders around the country. However, the partial closure should be a short-term measure. The appropriate and long-term actions should be detailed policing of our borders and curbing corruption among customs officers.
And Ogo tweets, the border is closed perpetually. Nigeria is of age to at least produce 90% of food they consume. We can't be talking about economic growth and at the same time aiding economic sabotage. These are the tweets that came in.
All right. On that note, we'd like to thank our two remaining guests. Joseph Atta, Deputy Controller of Customs. We'd like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
My pleasure.
Appreciation also to Ken Ukoha, who joined us via Skype from Ghana. He is, of course, the National President of the Association of Nigerian Traders. Ken Ukoha, thanks for being with us on the program this morning. All right, so that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. We are back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. Do enjoy the rainy morning.